Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. Alright, hi everyone, I'm Allison and you are in my kitchen and I'm going to walk you through one recipe that's in my cookbook. The reason why I am doing this is because I thought it would be fun. And I get so many people always asking me for tips or just ask me what my recipes look like, how long they take. So this is one that my sister actually just made and she thought it would be a good demo one because she seemed to have she didn't really get it completely right. So I thought this would be a great opportunity. So we are going to be making the soft tortilla wraps out of my Feast as a Family cookbook. I've been cooking a lot out of my cookbook these days, trying different recipes, tweaking here and there. So that's the first recipe I'm going to be doing, and then possibly we'll be doing just one little quick one that involves no cooking. So let's get started. What you need for this recipe is spelt flour, which I've already put it in my bowl, sea salt, olive oil, and warm water. And then I use my hot ceramic griddle. And that was my mom. She's probably trying to get on Facebook Live. I have no idea how to do it. So what I'm doing, I'm heating up my griddle because you can do this on your stovetop on a hot pan. But this is a lot easier and it's easier to flip and it gets really, really hot because that's the key to making these successful is you want the surface to be really hot. So I'm going to warm mine up and we are going to get started. So I have 2.5 cups of spelt flour. So the spelt flour I use is whole and sprouted. And then I already sprinkled my sea salt in with it, which you can mix it around. And then I'm going to add my olive oil. So this is 1/2 cup of cold pressed olive oil. And then about 1 cup of warm water. I'll pour some of that in there because sometimes it doesn't always need the full 1 cup. Sometimes it needs a little bit more. So you're just going to keep mixing it until it forms into a nice dough, nice ball that's pretty formable with your hands even. So I probably could add a little bit of spelt flour, but because it is pretty sticky, but that's okay. You don't always have to. The surface that I use is, actually I'm going to use a little bit more spelt flour. The surface I use a silicone pastry mat, so it makes it really easy to spread out and roll into the disc that you want it to be. So you can use spelt flour onto the mat that you're going to be rolling the wraps to. Water. So I'm just mixing in that extra little bit of spelt flour so it's easy for me to roll around. Okay, so that is ready to go. So I'm just going to take just a pinch of dough. This makes about 8 wraps. Actually, I'll duck behind here. It would be very helpful to use baking parchment paper, and I will show you why. Which this was the step my sister said I should include more. Is anyone out there? Yeah? Feel free to comment, ask questions. If you guys have been to my workshops in the past, you know I like participation. Makes me feel more at home. So that's what it's like right now. I use one of my daughter's plates to cut out. This makes about a 7-inch wrap. And then I will roll it on my hot The olive oil really makes it easier to come off of the parchment paper. And depending on the thickness, mine is pretty thin, so I don't really, my girls and husband don't really like to have thick wraps. But you can make it whatever thickness you want. And if I do have thicker ones, or if I'm making pizza crust, which that's what I'll use this if I want to make pizzas, then I'll make the crust or the wrap a little bit thicker. I think I have a couple comments I couldn't see.
Someone says, looks great.
Oh. I did make, I've been holding off making these until today, but for lunch I did make tuna salad and egg salad, but they didn't have this with their egg salad. So when it's ready to be flipped, you'll notice the color, I don't know if you can see or not, it'll start changing a little bit lighter brown, and it should start bubbling a little bit, not like bubbles that you would see in a pancake, but just smaller. Okay, the other side is done. And just flip it. I can't get this off. There we go. I'm trying to look for comments, but it's not letting me. Okay, now the slow part is just waiting for the other ones to hurry up. So, I think we will have time to make our other recipe. How I store these is I just keep them on the countertop. I don't put them in the fridge. They don't usually last that long anyways. It probably lasts a week in my house. And if you put them in the fridge, they lose the roll pliableness to it. And if you are freezing them, they do freeze really well. You can put parchment paper in between the wraps and throw them in the freezer, and then it's easy to peel them apart. Okay, what else? How's everyone doing? How is it being home? I'm telling you, this is the time, this is the opportunity to really take control of your health, because a lot of people are being forced to be home, and this is where you can try out new recipes. I know usually I try a new recipe every week, but now lately it's been every other day. So that's been fun, and my girls have been helping because, you know, they're not at school, they're home. I'm gonna let these cool before I show you what I put in them or how they roll. What is spelt flour? Spelt flour is a grain, so this is one of the few recipes that I have that is a grain. It's one of the, I think it's still considered an ancient grain, but it's not increasing quite as much the glycemic index whenever it's consumed. And I had another question what to put in them. So today, normally I would have put in the egg salad or the tuna salad that I made for lunch. Or my husband likes to put, for his breakfast, I'll make eggs, but he likes to put his eggs in a wrap. Because it gives him just a little bit more energy since he's very active. I don't eat as much grains because I tend to be very sluggish whenever I'm on grains, but I find that having spelt flour doesn't bring my energy down. It doesn't cause near as much inflammation. So I get my spelt flour from, I order it online, but you can get it almost anywhere now. Whole Foods I know sells spelt flour, but you want to make sure you're looking for the sprouted spelt flour. And it is the same ratio that you would use normal flour for. So I find that's very helpful, especially whenever I first came up with the idea with my cookbook. I wanted to transform a lot of the recipes that I grew up with, and that was comfortable for me. But a lot of them required either white flour or even wheat flour. But I wanted to find something that was a 1-to-1 ratio with that, and spelt flour is great. Okay, this is still very hot. If you don't put a parchment paper in between, it's not that big of a deal if you're just keeping it on the countertop. And it does, I find that if you don't put the parchment paper, it'll roll up pretty easy. But this is how it's going to roll up. Like, it does break a little bit, but my family doesn't really care about that. It kind of depends on how long you're leaving it on the griddle or the stovetop. If you don't leave it on there quite as much, then it's going to roll really easy and it's not going to crack. And there's no eggs in it. I mean, this is just what I have, like 4 ingredients. And one of those ingredients is water. What else? Anyone watching want to share a favorite recipe of theirs that they would like to see transformed into a healthier recipe? If you give me an idea, I might be able to work with it. I mean, this weekend, yesterday, I made biscuits and gravy. That was a favorite one of mine. And we made that, and it was delicious. And I used spelt flour for it instead of just your typical flour. Okay, so we've got a couple more to finish off here, but I'm going to get started on the next recipe. And I need my assistant for that one. Stella is my oldest. You want to see this?
Before we move on, what are the ingredients of your wraps?
Oh,
Real
the
quick.
ingredients. So it's the spelt flour, the olive oil, warm water, and salt. So that's what we're looking at. Now this next one is not in my recipe book. And no, it won't be my next one. I'm not ready for another one, so don't even ask, Debbie. But this is, we call it, what do we call these? Energy balls.
Energy balls.
Yes. So we're only going to do a single batch, but whenever I'm making these, I'm usually doing quadruple batch. And I'll stick these in the freezer, most of them in the freezer. Alright, Stella, what are we starting with? So with this one, it is 1 cup of oat flour. So I don't generally have oat flour in my cabinets, but I always have oats. So I'll take a cup of oats and put it in the blender and just try and get it as fine as possible. And then that's what we have there. And then what are we going to mix in there? Half a cup of almond butter. You want to pour that in there? So we have half a cup of nut butter, so you can use whatever kind of butter that you have on there. Nut butter. We have cashew. So really good. It's showing you what's in there. Good job. And then we're gonna add quarter of a cup of raw honey. I get my honey from a local farmer. My almond butter, I get at Costco or Sam's. And this one, I really like this recipe because you can add whatever you want in it. You can put flax seeds, chia seeds. We're going to keep it basic today, but I like adding chia seeds in it. Just kind of gives that extra energy boost. So we're going to stir this a little bit. Yep, let's get the other spoon out. Okay. Alright, let me start it here and then you can finish it. So it's going to be really sticky, but that's from the honey and the almond butter.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else do you think we're going to add in here? What do we usually put in there?
Chocolate chips.
Chocolate chips. So I get my chocolate chips, it's a dairy-free chocolate chips, and what else are we going to put in here? Maybe some cranberries? Sure. Put them in. And yeah, you can have a couple. Stella's payment for helping me is getting some chocolate chips. So this is where it gets a little bit harder to stir in, but you can always use your hands to mix it in if you are ever so inclined. And then I use a cookie scooper.
What are you making right now?
I'm making the oatmeal energy bites. Not in my cookbook. So it is, if you have a pen and paper, it's a cup of, cup of oat flour, half a cup of nut butter, a fourth a cup of honey, and a third a cup of cranberries.
And chocolate chips.
And chocolate chips. Okay, so I'll just scoop these out. and just roll them into a ball. And then I'll throw them in the fridge or the freezer. Most likely I'll do the freezer. But like I said, I'm usually double, quadrupling batch this because it's just nice to always have. I like having snacks or just little energy bites, just in case. Or little, if I have a sweet tooth, then we like to have these, so I'm not tempted on any of the bad stuff. And this is all whole food ingredients and whole food recipe, so we don't have to feel as bad about eating it. And that's what these are. Okay, all of my wraps are done. Turn this off. So, how many did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I consistently get 8 wraps every time. So, a lot of times I will double batch my wraps and freeze a bunch, but most of the time I'm just doing it at the very, very beginning of the week, or on Sundays. Sundays is my prep days, which most of you know. So I'll make these, and I'll make the energy bites, and then we at least have something for our lunches and little snacks here and there. Alright, I think that's all we're gonna do today. Thanks, guys. I'm really, these are what the energy bites are. I'm really hoping that this was my very first Facebook Live, so it's going to get better, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun for us to stay connected, for me to share what I'm doing in the kitchen. And if you have any questions, or if you have any ideas, any recipes you want me to try out or to show you out of my cookbook, I'd be more than happy to do a Facebook Live. And
where can I get your cookbook?
You can buy my cookbook. You can find it on Amazon. You can also find it in our office, Columbia Family Chiropractic. You could call, and if you want it mailed, we can mail it to you, but you can find it on Amazon. I'm not sure. I think that's the only places that we have it for right now. Alright, well, everyone stay safe, and thanks for sharing your time with me.